The dust cloud rose like a prayer against the burning Wyoming sky. But Eleanor Hartley wasn't praying. She was cursing the broken axle that had just condemned her to walk in this merciless August heat of 1878. The wagon tilted at an angle that would have been comical if her entire life wasn't packed inside it, and if the nearest town wasn't 15 miles behind her, and if the sun wasn't already beginning its slow descent toward the horizon. She stepped down from the driver's bench, her boots hitting the hard-packed earth with a sound that felt far too final, and surveyed the damage with the kind of grim determination that had carried her all the way from Missouri after her father's death 3 months ago. The wood had splintered clean through, and even with her limited knowledge of wagon repair, she knew this wasn't something she could fix with hope and a hammer. Her mare, Clementine, shifted in the traces and whinnied softly, as if to ask what came next. Eleanor wished she had an answer. The mountains rose in the distance, purple and imposing, and the grassland stretched endlessly in every direction, dotted with sage and the occasional twisted pine. She had maybe 2 hours of good daylight left, and then what? Sleep under the wagon and hope no wolves or bears came calling. Start walking and abandon everything she owned. She pulled off her bonnet and wiped the sweat from her forehead, her dark hair already escaping its pins in the heat. 23 years old, and stranded in the middle of Wyoming territory with nothing but a broken wagon and dwindling options. She was considering whether to unhitch Clementine and ride for help when she heard it, the sound of hoofbeats approaching from the west. Eleanor's hand instinctively went to the rifle propped against the wagon seat. Out here, a woman alone couldn't be too careful. But as the rider came into view, cresting a small rise about a quarter-mile away, something in his easy posture suggested he wasn't looking for trouble. He rode a big buckskin horse and wore a hat that had seen better days, and as he drew closer, she could make out a face that was sun-bronzed and angular, with eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He slowed his horse to a walk as he approached, keeping his hands visible on the reins. "Afternoon, ma'am," he called out when he was still a respectful distance away. "Looks like you've run into some trouble." Eleanor kept her hand near the rifle but didn't reach for it. "The axle broke about 20 minutes ago. I don't suppose you know anything about wagon repair." He swung down from his horse with the kind of fluid grace that spoke of a lifetime in the saddle, and walked over to examine the damage. Up close, she could see he was probably in his late 20s, with dark blonde hair that curled slightly at his collar and a jawline that suggested he didn't smile often, but when he did, it would be worth seeing. He crouched down beside the broken axle, running his fingers along the splintered wood, and let out a low whistle. "That's broken clean through," he said, standing up and dusting off his hands on his worn denim pants. "You're not fixing that out here, not without a new axle and some serious time." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. "Where were you headed?" "There's supposed to be a town called Silver Creek about 30 miles north," Eleanor said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the sinking feeling in her chest. "I have family there. Or I'm supposed to. My aunt wrote me after my father died, said she could use help with her boarding house." The cowboy nodded slowly, then glanced up at the sky, calculating the light left in the day. "Silver Creek is a good town. But you're not going to make it there tonight, not on foot and not with a wagon that can't roll." He seemed to come to some kind of decision, and when he looked back at her, there was something in his eyes that she couldn't quite read. "My ranch is about a mile west of here. I've got a barn where we can store your wagon, tools to fix that axle, and a spare room if you need a place to stay while we get you sorted." Eleanor felt the automatic suspicion rise up. "That's very kind of you, but I don't even know your name." "Cole Brennan," he said, and held out his hand. "I run a cattle operation about 1,000 acres west of here. Been out checking fence lines when I saw your dust cloud. And before you ask, yes, I have a housekeeper who lives on the property, Mrs. Chen. She's been with me for 3 years, and she'll vouch that I'm not the kind of man who would harm a woman in distress." There was something earnest in the way he said it, and Eleanor found herself wanting to believe him. She took his hand. His grip was firm and warm and calloused from work, and shook it once. "Eleanor Hartley, and I appreciate the offer, Mr. Brennan, but I can't just impose on strangers." "Well, you can't stay out here either," Cole said practically. "And I'd say fate brought you to me, seeing as how my ranch is the only one for about 10 miles in any direction. You breaking down right here, right when I happen to be riding past, that's not coincidence, Miss Hartley, that's providence." Despite everything, Eleanor felt a smile tug at her lips. "You believe in fate, Mr. Brennan?" "I believe in helping people when they need it," he said. "And I believe in not letting a lady spend the night in the open when there's a perfectly good roof a mile away, so what do you say? Let me help you get your wagon to my place. We can put your horse in the barn with some good feed, and tomorrow we'll figure out how to get you on your way to Silver Creek." Eleanor looked at the broken axle, then at the darkening sky, then back at Cole Brennan's open, honest face. She had learned to trust her instincts since her father died, and her instincts were telling her that this man was offering genuine help with no strings attached. "All right," she said finally. "I accept your offer, Mr. Brennan, and thank you." "Cole," he corrected. "Out here, we don't stand much on formality." He walked back to his horse and pulled a length of rope from his saddle. "I can rig up a tow using my horse and yours. It won't be fast, but we can get your wagon to my place before full dark if we start now." He worked quickly and efficiently, clearly a man who knew his way around practical problems. He rigged a double harness that allowed both horses to pull the wagon despite its broken axle, distributing the weight in a way that wouldn't damage it further. Eleanor found herself watching the way his hands moved, confident and sure, and the way he spoke softly to the horses as he worked, gentling them into accepting the unfamiliar arrangement. "You're good with horses," she observed. "Been working with them since I could walk," Cole said, not looking up from the knot he was tying. "My father ran horses before he ran cattle, taught me that if you treat an animal with respect, they'll give you everything they have." He straightened and tested the rope, making sure it was secure. "There, that should hold. You can ride in the wagon if you want, but it might be a rough journey with that broken axle dragging." "I'll walk," Eleanor decided. "I've been sitting all day anyway." They set off across the grassland, the two horses pulling the damaged wagon with slow, steady determination. Cole walked beside his buckskin, one hand on the lead rope, and Eleanor walked on the other side, occasionally steadying the wagon when it hit a rough patch. The sun continued its descent, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that were so beautiful it almost hurt to look at them. In Missouri, the land had been green and rolling, full of trees and rivers. Out here, everything was bigger sky, bigger distances, bigger silence. It was both terrifying and exhilarating. "How long have you had your ranch?" Eleanor asked, partly to break the silence and partly because she was genuinely curious about this man who had appeared like some kind of answer to a prayer she hadn't known she was praying. 4 years now," Cole said. "Saved up working as a ranch hand for other people, then bought the land when the previous owner decided he'd had enough of Wyoming winters and wanted to go back to Texas. It's not the biggest spread, but it's mine. Got about 200 head of cattle, some horses, a good water source. It's a living. Do you run it alone?" "Mostly. I've got 2 ranch hands who come in during busy seasons, branding, roundup, that kind of thing, and Mrs. Chen keeps the house running and makes sure I don't starve. She came out here with her husband about 5 years ago, but he died in an accident the first winter. I needed help, she needed work, so it worked out for both of us." He glanced over at Eleanor. "What about you? What made you decide to come all the way to Wyoming?" Eleanor felt the familiar tightness in her chest that came whenever she thought about her father. "My father and I had a small farm in Missouri, just the two of us after my mother died when I was 12. He passed in May. His heart just gave out one day while he was working in the field. There was nothing left for me there. The bank owned most of the land and what little we had went to pay his debts. My mother's sister, Aunt Catherine, has a boarding house in Silver Creek. She wrote and said I could come stay with her, help her run the place. So I packed up what I could and started west. I'm sorry about your father, Cole said, and the way he said it suggested he understood loss. It's hard losing the people who anchor us. Did you lose someone? Eleanor asked gently. My parents, in a fire when I was 19. My sister, too. She was only 16. His voice was quiet, factual, but Eleanor could hear the old pain underneath it. That's part of why I came out here. Too many memories back in Kansas. Needed a fresh start. They walked in companionable silence for a while after that, both of them lost in their own thoughts. The ranch came into view as they crested a small rise. A sprawling wooden house with a wide porch, a large barn painted red, several outbuildings and corrals where horses grazed in the long evening light. It looked solid and well-maintained, the kind of place built by someone who intended to stay. Smoke rose from the chimney, and as they drew closer, Eleanor could see a small woman in a dark dress come out onto the porch, shading her eyes as she watched them approach. That's Mrs. Chen, Cole said. She's probably wondering why I'm bringing home a broken wagon and a strange woman. Mrs. Chen proved to be a Chinese woman of indeterminate age with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense manner. She listened as Cole explained the situation, her gaze moving from Eleanor to the wagon and back again. The guest room is made up, she said finally, her English accented but clear. I will make extra for dinner. Miss Hartley looks like she has not eaten properly in days. Eleanor felt her cheeks flush because it was true, she had been rationing her supplies, trying to make them last until she reached Silver Creek. I don't want to be any trouble. No trouble, Mrs. Chen said firmly. You are guest. Cole does not bring guests often. This is good. You come inside, wash up. Cole will take care of wagon and horse. There was something about Mrs. Chen's brisk kindness that made Eleanor's throat tighten with unexpected emotion. She had been alone for so long, managing everything by herself, being strong because there was no other choice. Having someone tell her to rest, to wash up, to let someone else take care of things. It was almost overwhelming. Cole must have seen something in her face because he said quietly, Go on. Your mare will be fine. I'll make sure she gets water and feed and a good rub-down. You can check on her after dinner if you want. Eleanor nodded, not trusting her voice, and followed Mrs. Chen into the house. The interior was simple but comfortable, wooden floors, furniture that was worn but well-made, windows that let in the last of the evening light. Mrs. Chen led her upstairs to a small bedroom with a single bed covered in a colorful quilt, a washstand with a basin and pitcher, and a window that looked out over the prairie. Water in the pitcher is fresh, Mrs. Chen said. I bring hot water in a few minutes so you can wash properly. Dinner will be ready in 1 hour. She paused in the doorway and looked back at Eleanor with something that might have been sympathy. You are safe here. Cole is good man. He will help you. After Mrs. Chen left, Eleanor sank down onto the bed and let herself have one moment of pure relief. She was safe. She had a place to sleep tonight. Her wagon and her horse were being taken care of. Tomorrow she would figure out the next step, but for now she could just breathe. She looked around the simple room and felt something unfurl in her chest that might have been hope. True to her word, Mrs. Chen returned with a large pitcher of hot water. Eleanor washed the dust and sweat from her skin, changed into one of her 2 good dresses, a simple blue cotton that she had been saving for her arrival in Silver Creek, and pinned her dark hair back up into something resembling respectability. When she came downstairs, the smell of cooking made her stomach growl audibly. She followed the scent to a large kitchen where Mrs. Chen was pulling bread from the oven and Cole was washing his hands at the sink, his hat hung on a peg by the door. He turned when she entered and something flickered across his face, appreciation maybe or surprise. You clean up nice, he said, then seemed to realize how that sounded and cleared his throat. I mean, you look rested, that's good. Eleanor found herself smiling at his awkwardness. Thank you. And thank you for taking care of Clementine. I should have done it myself. She's a good mare, Cole said. Good bones, well trained, she'll be fine for the night. He gestured to the table, which was set for 3. "Mrs. Chen doesn't like it when people are late for dinner. We should sit." The meal was simple but delicious: beef stew with vegetables, fresh bread, and strong coffee. They ate with the kind of focused appreciation that came from hard work and genuine hunger. Mrs. Chen asked Eleanor about her journey, and Eleanor found herself talking about the weeks on the trail, the other travelers she had met, the way the landscape had changed as she moved west. Cole listened more than he talked, but when he did speak, his comments were thoughtful and to the point. After dinner, Mrs. Chen shooed them both out of the kitchen so she could clean up. "You go sit on porch," she ordered. "Too nice an evening to waste inside." Cole grabbed his coffee and headed for the front door, and Eleanor followed. The porch had several chairs and a bench, and the view was spectacular. The sun was fully down now, but the sky still held the last traces of light, and the stars were beginning to emerge in impossible numbers. Eleanor had never seen so many stars. In Missouri, the trees blocked much of the sky. "Out here, it felt like you could see forever. It's beautiful," she said softly, settling into one of the chairs. "It is," Cole agreed. He was leaning against the porch rail, his coffee cup cradled in his hands. "I never get tired of it. Every night is different, different light, different clouds, different feeling. Makes you realize how small you are, you know, but in a good way. Like your problems aren't as big as you think they are." Eleanor thought about her broken wagon, her uncertain future, the aunt she had never met who might or might not actually want her help. "I hope you're right about that. The wagon will be fixable," Cole said, as if reading her thoughts. "I've got seasoned wood in the barn that should work for a new axle. It will take a day, maybe 2, to shape it right and fit it properly, but it can be done. And if you need to stay here while I work on it, that's fine. Mrs. Chen enjoys having another woman around, and Lord knows I could use help with some things around here if you're willing to work for your keep." "I'm willing," Eleanor said immediately. "I'm not someone who can just sit idle while other people do things for me. What kind of help do you need?" Cole smiled, and it transformed his whole face, making him look younger and less weathered. "Well, there's always mending to be done. Mrs. Chen does her best, but she's got the house and the cooking to manage. And I've got to count books that are a mess because I'm better with cattle than I am with numbers. If you've got a head for figures, that would be a real help." "I kept my father's books for years," Eleanor said. "I can do that. Then we have a deal. You help me get my affairs in order. I'll fix your wagon and make sure you have everything you need to get safely to Silver Creek." He held out his hand again, and Eleanor shook it, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers and the calluses that spoke of hard work. "Deal," she said, and found herself reluctant to let go of his hand. There was something about Cole Brennan that made her feel safe in a way she hadn't felt since her father died. Maybe it was the quiet competence he radiated, or the genuine kindness in his eyes, or the way he treated her like an equal rather than a burden. Whatever it was, Eleanor found herself hoping it would take more than a day or 2 to fix that wagon. They sat on the porch until the stars filled the entire sky and the air grew cool enough that Eleanor shivered in her thin dress. Cole noticed immediately and straightened up. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be a full day. I've got chores in the morning, but in the afternoon I can start on that axle." "What time do you want breakfast?" Eleanor asked. "Mrs. Chen usually has it ready by 6, but you don't have to get up that early. You're a guest." "I'm a guest who's going to work for her keep," Eleanor reminded him. "I'll be up at 6. She went inside and up to her room, where the bed was turned down and the window was open to let in the cool night air. She changed into her nightgown and slipped between the sheets, expecting to lie awake worrying about everything that had happened and everything that still needed to happen. Instead, she fell asleep almost immediately, lulled by the sound of the wind in the grass and the distant lowing of cattle, sleeping more deeply than she had in months. She woke to the sound of a rooster crowing and the smell of coffee. The sun was just beginning to lighten the sky, and when Eleanor looked out her window, she could see Cole already out in the corral. working with a young horse that was clearly still learning about saddles and riders. He moved with patient determination, and the horse, though skittish, seemed to trust him enough to try. Eleanor dressed quickly in her working clothes, a simple brown skirt and white blouse, and headed downstairs. Mrs. Chen was in the kitchen, and she looked up with approval when Eleanor appeared. "Good, you are up. Cole said you would be. He knows people well." She poured coffee and handed the cup to Eleanor. "You can set the table. Breakfast will be ready soon." They fell into an easy rhythm, Mrs. Chen cooking and Eleanor helping where she could. When Cole came in from the corral, he looked surprised to see Eleanor up and dressed. "Didn't have to get up so early," he said, but he was smiling. "I told you I would," Eleanor said. "I keep my word." Breakfast was eggs and bacon and more of that good bread, and they ate quickly because daylight was valuable and there was work to be done. Cole headed back out to the corral, and Eleanor helped Mrs. Chen with the dishes before asking what else needed to be done. "There is mending, Mrs. Chen said, pointing to a basket overflowing with clothes that needed repair. "And Cole's office is disaster, papers everywhere. He is good with ranch, not so good with organization." Eleanor spent the morning working through the mending basket, her needle flying through tears and loose buttons and worn seams. It was meditative work, the kind that let her mind wander while her hands stayed busy. She found herself thinking about Cole, the way he had immediately offered to help her, the way he spoke about his land with quiet pride, the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't paying attention. There was an attraction there, she couldn't deny it, but it felt complicated by the fact that she was stranded here and dependent on his help. Was what she felt real, or was it just gratitude and the natural response to being rescued? After lunch, Cole appeared at the kitchen door and asked if she wanted to come see the work on the wagon. Eleanor followed him out to the barn, where he had the broken axle propped up on a workbench and several pieces of seasoned wood laid out beside it. "I think this oak will work best," he said, running his hand along one of the pieces. "It's strong and it's already seasoned so it won't warp. I'll need to shape it to match the dimensions of the old axle, then fit the hardware. Probably take the rest of today and most of tomorrow. Can I help?" Eleanor asked. Cole looked at her consideringly. "You know anything about woodworking?" "Not much, but I can learn, and I can at least hand you tools or hold things steady." "All right then," Cole said and handed her a piece of sandpaper. "You can start by smoothing out the rough spots on this piece while I take measurements." They worked together through the afternoon, Cole shaping the wood with practiced strokes of his draw knife while Eleanor sanded and fetched tools and asked questions about the process. He was a good teacher, patient and clear, and Eleanor found she enjoyed the work. There was something satisfying about taking raw materials and turning them into something useful, something that would carry her forward on her journey. As the sun began to sink lower, Cole set down his tools and stretched, his back cracking audibly. "That's good progress for today. We'll finish the shaping tomorrow, and then it's just a matter of fitting it to the wagon and making sure it's secure." "Thank you," Eleanor said quietly. "I know I've said it before, but I mean it. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come along when you did." "You would have figured something out," Cole said. "You seem like the kind of person who does." He looked at her for a long moment, and Eleanor felt her breath catch at the intensity in his eyes. "I'm glad I found you, though. It's been a long time since I've had someone to talk to who wasn't Mrs. Chen or the cattle." They walked back to the house together, their shoulders nearly touching, and Eleanor felt something shift between them, a recognition, maybe, of the possibility of something more than just helper and helped. It was both thrilling and terrifying, because in a few days she would be leaving, continuing on to Silver Creek and the life she had planned there. Wasn't that what she had to do? Wasn't that the responsible, sensible choice? But that night, sitting on the porch again after dinner and watching the stars emerge, Eleanor found herself questioning what she wanted versus what she thought she should want. Cole was telling her about the ranch, about his plans to expand the herd and maybe start breeding horses again like his father had done. and the enthusiasm in his voice made her smile. This was a man who loved what he did, who had built something from nothing and was proud of it. That kind of passion was rare and valuable. "What about you?" Cole asked suddenly. "What do you want, Eleanor? Not what you think you should do or what makes sense. What do you actually want?" Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, surprised by the question. No one had asked her that in a very long time. "I want a home," she said finally. "Not just a place to live, but a real home, somewhere I belong, someone to belong to. I want to wake up in the morning and know that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." "That's a good thing to want," Cole said softly. "I hope you find it." The next day followed a similar pattern: chores in the morning, work on the wagon in the afternoon. Eleanor also spent time in Cole's office, sorting through the chaos of papers and receipts and ledgers. He hadn't been exaggerating, his record-keeping was a disaster. But as she worked through the mess, she discovered that he was actually doing better financially than he probably realized. His expenses were reasonable, his income from cattle sales was steady, and he had been slowly building up a reserve of cash. With better organization and some strategic planning, he could probably expand his operations significantly. She was so absorbed in the numbers that she didn't hear him come into the office until he spoke. "Finding anything interesting?" Eleanor looked up with a smile. "You're doing better than you think you are. Your profit margin is actually quite good, especially for a ranch this size. You could easily afford to hire on another permanent hand or invest in better breeding stock." Cole came around the desk to look at what she had written out in a clear, organized ledger. "I'll be damned," he said softly. "I always thought I was just barely scraping by." "You're being careful with your money, which is smart, but you don't have to be quite this careful. You have room to grow." Eleanor looked up at him and found he was standing very close enough that she could see the small scar on his jaw and the way his eyes had flecks of gold in the brown. "You're good at this," Cole said. "Real good. My Aunt Catherine is lucky you're coming to help her." The mention of her aunt and Silver Creek was like a splash of cold water. Eleanor had been so caught up in the work and in being here at the ranch that she had almost forgotten this was temporary. In another day, the wagon would be fixed and she would leave. The thought made her chest tight with something that felt uncomfortably like grief. "Thank you," she managed. "I should get back to this. I want to have it all sorted before I leave." Something flickered across Cole's face, disappointment maybe, or resignation. "Right, of course." He stepped back, putting distance between them. "I'll let you work." After he left, Eleanor sat staring at the ledger without really seeing it. She was being ridiculous. She had known this man for less than 3 days. You didn't fall in love with someone in 3 days, and you certainly didn't append your entire life plan for them. She had made a commitment to her aunt, and she was going to honor it. That was the right thing to do, the sensible thing. But her heart, it seemed, wasn't interested in being sensible. That evening at dinner, Mrs. Chen announced that she would be going into the small town of Clearwater the next day to buy supplies. "I will be gone all day," she said. "Eleanor, maybe you can cook dinner. I will leave instructions." "I can manage," Eleanor assured her, even though the thought of being alone with Cole all day made her pulse quicken. After Mrs. Chen retired for the night, Cole and Eleanor sat on the porch again. It had become their ritual, this quiet time under the stars. Tonight, though, there was a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. Finally, Cole broke the silence. "The wagon will be ready tomorrow," he said. "I'll help you hitch it up and you can test it out, make sure everything is secure. If it all looks good, you could leave the day after." "That's wonderful," Eleanor said, trying to inject enthusiasm into her voice. "I can't thank you enough for everything you've done." "Eleanor," Cole said, and there was something in his voice that made her turn to look at him. He was gripping the porch rail like it was the only thing keeping him upright. "I have to tell you something, and I know it's going to sound crazy, but if I don't say it now, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life." Eleanor's heart was suddenly pounding. "What is it?" Cole turned to face her fully, and in the starlight, his face was all shadows and earnest intensity. "I don't want you to go. I know we just met. I know you have plans and a life waiting for you in Silver Creek. I know this makes no sense. But these past few days, having you here, it's felt right in a way nothing has felt right in a long time. When I'm with you, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, and I hope, you might feel something like that too. Eleanor couldn't breathe. Everything she had been trying not to feel, trying not to acknowledge, was suddenly out in the open between them. Cole, you don't have to say anything right now, he said quickly. I just needed you to know. When you leave, I want you to leave knowing that there's a place here for you if you want it. Not as a guest or a worker, but as, he took a breath. As my wife, if you'll have me. I know it's fast, I know we barely know each other, but sometimes you just know you know. Sometimes fate puts exactly what you need right in front of you and you'd be a fool not to reach out and grab it. Eleanor felt tears prick her eyes. You said fate brought me to you, and I meant it, Cole said. That wagon breaking down exactly where it did, exactly when I was riding by, that wasn't coincidence. That was meant to happen. You were meant to end up here, with me. Eleanor stood up and walked to the edge of the porch, her mind whirling. Everything he was saying, she had been feeling too. But it was insane, wasn't it? You didn't marry someone after knowing them for 3 days. Except people did it all the time out west, didn't they? Women came west to marry men they had only corresponded with through letters. At least she and Cole had met, had worked together, had talked and laughed and shared pieces of themselves. What about my aunt? She asked. She's expecting me. She needs help with her boarding house. Write to her, Cole said. Explain what happened. She'll understand, and if she doesn't, I'll pay her whatever she would have earned from your work. I'm not trying to take you away from your family, Eleanor. But I'm asking you to consider whether that's really where you want to go, or if maybe you'd rather stay here and build something with me. Eleanor turned to look at him, this man who had appeared when she needed him most, who had helped her without asking for anything in return, who looked at her like she was something precious and valuable. I feel it too, she whispered. That feeling that this is right, that I'm supposed to be here. It scares me how much I feel after only 3 days. Cole crossed the porch in 2 strides and took her hands in his. It scares me too, but I've learned that life is short and unpredictable. When you find something real, something that matters, you hold on to it. You don't let it slip away because you're scared or because it doesn't fit into your plans. Eleanor looked down at their joined hands, his so much larger than hers, rough from work but gentle in the way he held her. She thought about her father, who had loved her mother until the day he died, who had never recovered from losing her. She thought about what he would want for her, safety, yes, but also joy, also love, also a life lived fully rather than cautiously. I want to stay, she said, and the moment the words were out, she felt a lightness in her chest like something heavy had been lifted. I want to stay and see what this is between us. I want to wake up and watch you work with the horses. I want to organize your office and argue with you about expanding the herd. I want to sit on this porch every night and watch the stars with you. Cole's face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen on him. You mean it? You'll stay? You'll marry me? I'll stay, Eleanor confirmed. But maybe we should take a little time before we get married. I meant what I said about this being fast. Can we just see how things go? Get to know each other better. We can take all the time you need, Cole said, though his eyes were dancing with joy. As long as you promise you're staying, we can do this however you want. Eleanor laughed, giddy with the enormity of what she had just decided. I promise I'm staying, at least through the winter. After that, we'll see. After winter, you'll never want to leave, Cole said confidently. Wyoming winters are hard, but they're beautiful. And you'll be snowed in here with me and Mrs. Chen, and by spring you'll know me so well you'll be sick of me. I doubt that, Eleanor said softly. Cole raised one hand to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Can I kiss you? He asked, his voice rough. Eleanor nodded, not trusting her voice, and then his lips were on hers, warm and gentle and tasting like coffee and possibility. It was a perfect first kiss, not too demanding, not too tentative, just right. When they pulled apart, Eleanor was smiling so hard her face hurt. I should write to my aunt, she said practically. Tomorrow, when Mrs. Chen is in town, maybe she could post the letter for me. I'll pay for the postage, Cole said. And like I said, if your aunt is upset about losing your help, I'll make it right with her. I don't want you to lose family over this. They stayed up late into the night, talking about everything and nothing, making plans and dreaming out loud. Cole told her about his vision for the ranch, about wanting to breed horses that were smart and sturdy enough to handle Wyoming winters. Eleanor told him about growing up on a small farm, about learning to read by lamplight and keeping her father's books and dreaming about seeing mountains. They talked about their parents, about loss and grief, and how to move forward from it. They talked until Eleanor could barely keep her eyes open, and then Cole walked her upstairs to her room and kissed her goodnight at the door like a proper gentleman. Eleanor fell into bed and stared at the ceiling, wondering if she had lost her mind. She had just agreed to stay on a ranch in Wyoming with a man she had known for 3 days instead of continuing on to her aunt and the life that had been planned. It was impulsive and reckless and completely unlike her. But it also felt absolutely right, like every step she had taken since leaving Missouri had been leading her exactly here, to this room, to this ranch, to this man. She woke early the next morning to the sound of Mrs. Chen moving around downstairs. When Eleanor came down to the kitchen, Mrs. Chen took one look at her face and smiled knowingly. "You are staying," she said. "It wasn't a question." "How did you know?" Eleanor asked, laughing. "You look happy. Cole looks happy. Even old woman like me can see what is between you." Mrs. Chen poured coffee and handed it to Eleanor. "This is good. Cole needs someone. He has been alone too long." "I need to write a letter to my aunt," Eleanor said, "explaining why I'm not coming. Would you be able to post it when you go to town today? Of course. You write letter, I will make sure it gets to post office." Mrs. Chen started pulling out ingredients for breakfast. "You will be good for Cole, and he will be good for you. This is how it should be." Eleanor spent the morning composing the letter to her aunt, trying to explain the inexplicable. She was honest about what had happened. The wagon breaking down, Cole offering to help, the feelings that had developed between them. She promised to write regularly and invited her aunt to visit whenever she wanted. She apologized for any inconvenience and offered to help find someone else to assist with the boarding house if needed. It took several drafts before she had something that felt right, and by the time she sealed the envelope, Mrs. Chen was ready to leave for town. After Mrs. Chen departed in the ranch wagon, Eleanor and Cole were alone on the ranch for the first time. It should have felt awkward, but instead it felt natural. They worked together to finish securing the new axle on Eleanor's wagon, testing it to make sure it would hold. The repair was solid. Eleanor could tell that much even with her limited knowledge of such things. The wagon could take her to Silver Creek easily if she wanted to go, but she didn't want to go. She wanted to stay right here. They spent the afternoon doing ranch chores together. Cole showed her how to check the cattle for injury or illness, how to repair fence line, how to read the land for signs of weather changes. Eleanor proved to be a quick learner, unafraid of hard work or getting dirty. At one point, while they were mending a section of fence, a cow got spooked by something and ran at them. Cole pulled Eleanor out of the way and they ended up tumbling into the grass together, laughing breathlessly. "You all right?" Cole asked, still half on top of her. "I'm perfect," Eleanor said, and meant it. The sky above them was impossibly blue and Cole's weight was warm and solid and she could smell sage and grass and horse. This was real. This was life. This was exactly where she wanted to be. Cole kissed her then, deeper than the night before, and Eleanor wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him back with all the pent-up emotion of the past days. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "I know it's too soon to say it, but I do. I love you, Eleanor Hartley." "I love you too," Eleanor whispered, and felt the truth of it in every cell of her body. It was fast and it was crazy and it was absolutely true. They finished the fence repair in a happy daze and headed back to the house to start on dinner. Eleanor had promised Mrs. Chen she could cook, and she was determined to prove she could hold her own in the kitchen. She made a simple stew with vegetables and beef and biscuits that were almost as good as Mrs. Chen's. They ate at the kitchen table, their knees touching under the wood, and talked about what came next. "I want to do this properly," Cole said. "I want to court you the right way, even if you're already living here. I want to take you into Clearwater and introduce you around. I want to buy you a proper ring when we do decide to get married. I want everyone to know that you're mine and I'm yours." "I'd like that," Eleanor said. "Though I should warn you, I don't need anything fancy. A simple ring will do just fine." "You'll have the ring you deserve," Cole said firmly. "And a proper wedding, too, when the time comes. Small, maybe, just Mrs. Chen and a few friends, but proper." They were cleaning up the dishes when Mrs. Chen returned from town, her wagon loaded with supplies. Cole went out to help her unload, and Eleanor stayed in the kitchen to put things away. Mrs. Chen came in looking satisfied. "Your letter is posted," she told Eleanor, "and I bought extra sugar and flour. If you are staying, we will need more for baking." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen," Eleanor said, "for everything, for making me feel welcome here." Mrs. Chen patted her hand. "You are welcome because you belong here. Some things are just meant to be." The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm. Eleanor took over more of the household management, working alongside Mrs. Chen to keep the house running smoothly. She continued organizing Cole's office, setting up a proper bookkeeping system that would make tax time much easier. She learned to ride better, so she could accompany Cole when he checked the far pastures. She learned to recognize individual cows, to spot signs of illness or injury, to read the weather in the clouds and the way the animals behaved. Cole, for his part, proved to be a patient teacher and an attentive suitor. He brought her wildflowers from the prairie. He taught her to shoot a rifle properly in case she ever needed to protect herself or the ranch. He took her into Clearwater and introduced her as his intended, his pride obvious in every word. The townspeople were welcoming, if a bit curious about this woman who had appeared out of nowhere and captured their most eligible bachelor's heart. Eleanor wrote regular letters to her aunt, and was relieved when Aunt Catherine wrote back saying she understood and wished Eleanor every happiness. The boarding house was doing fine, and she had already found someone else to help. There were no hard feelings, only good wishes. The letter lifted a weight from Eleanor's shoulders that she hadn't fully realized she was carrying. As summer turned to fall, the ranch took on a new kind of beauty. The prairie grass turned gold, and the aspens on the mountainsides blazed yellow and orange. Cole took Eleanor up into the high pastures to bring the cattle down for winter, and they spent 3 days camping under the stars with just their horses and each other for company. It was on the second night, sitting by the fire with the cattle settled and the stars overhead, that Cole proposed properly. He pulled a small box from his saddlebag and opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small diamond. "It's not much," he said, "but I want you to have it. I want everyone to know you're spoken for. Eleanor Hartley, will you marry me?" Eleanor's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the ring, then at Cole's earnest face. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. And then he was kissing her, and she was kissing him back, and the fire crackled and the stars watched, and Eleanor felt like the luckiest woman alive. They were married in October on a crisp autumn day when the sky was so blue, it hurt to look at it. The ceremony was held at the ranch, with just Mrs. Chen, the 2 ranch hands, and a handful of friends from Clearwater in attendance. The circuit preacher happened to be passing through, which Cole took as yet another sign that this was meant to be. Eleanor wore a simple white dress that Mrs. Chen had helped her sew, and Cole wore his best suit, and when they said their vows, Eleanor's voice was strong and sure. The wedding supper was held on the porch, with tables set up and food contributed by everyone in attendance. There was roast beef and potatoes, fresh bread, pies made from wild berries, and a cake that Mrs. Chen had spent 2 days preparing. As the sun set and the stars came out, someone produced a fiddle, and there was dancing on the porch and in the yard. Cole swept Eleanor into his arms and they waltzed clumsily, both of them laughing at their lack of skill but not caring in the slightest. Later, after the guests had left and Mrs. Chen had tactfully retired to her own quarters, Cole carried Eleanor over the threshold of the bedroom they would now share. He set her down gently and looked at her with such love that Eleanor felt her breath catch. "Are you happy?" he asked. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Eleanor said honestly. 4 months ago I thought my life was over, I thought I had lost everything, and now look at me, I have a home, a husband, a future, I have everything I ever wanted. "I'm the lucky one," Cole said, pulling her close. "You came into my life like a miracle, and I'm going to spend every day making sure you never regret staying." They made love for the first time that night, gentle and exploratory, learning each other's bodies the way they had learned each other's hearts. It was sweet and awkward and perfect, and afterward they lay tangled together, Eleanor's head on Cole's chest, listening to his heartbeat and feeling more at peace than she had in years. Winter came hard and fast to Wyoming that year. By November, the snow was piling up in drifts taller than a man, and the temperatures dropped so low that water froze solid in minutes. Eleanor learned what it meant to be truly isolated. There were weeks when they couldn't get to town, when it was just her and Cole and Mrs. Chen and the endless white landscape. But instead of feeling trapped, Eleanor felt cocooned. The house was warm and solid, the pantry was well stocked, and she had everything she needed right here within these walls. She and Cole grew even closer during those long winter months. They spent evenings by the fire, Eleanor reading aloud from books while Cole carved or mended tack. They played card games with Mrs. Chen and drank hot cider and told stories. Cole taught Eleanor to play chess, and she proved to be a quick study, winning her first game within a month of learning. They made love frequently, passionately, learning what pleased each other and growing more confident in their intimacy. By January, Eleanor knew she was pregnant. She had missed her courses twice, and the morning sickness that plagued her for the first hour of each day was unmistakable. She told Cole one snowy evening when they were alone in their room, nervous about how he would react. They had talked about children in an abstract way, but she wasn't sure if he was ready for the reality of it so soon. Cole's face went through a series of expressions, shock, wonder, joy, before he pulled her into a fierce embrace. "A baby, we're going to have a baby, in late summer, I think," Eleanor said, her own voice shaky with emotion. "Are you happy?" "Happy." Cole pulled back to look at her, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "Eleanor, I'm ecstatic, terrified but ecstatic. We're going to be parents." They told Mrs. Chen the next morning, and she immediately went into planning mode, talking about cribs and baby clothes and dietary needs. Over the following months, as Eleanor's belly grew, the whole household seemed to revolve around preparing for the new arrival. Cole built a beautiful cradle from oak, carving intricate designs into the headboard. Mrs. Chen sewed tiny clothes and blankets. Eleanor knitted booties and caps, her hands never idle. Spring came eventually, as it always did, and with it came the thaw and the return of the ranch hands for calving season. Eleanor was 5 months pregnant by then, her belly round and prominent under her dresses. The men were respectful and congratulatory, and Eleanor found she enjoyed having more people around, the ranch alive with activity and purpose. Cole was protective to the point of being overprotective, not wanting Eleanor to overexert herself. But Eleanor had grown up on a farm. She knew pregnant women didn't need to be treated like invalids. She continued to help with the household chores, with the bookkeeping, with everything except the heaviest physical labor. She felt strong and healthy and more connected to her body than she ever had before. In August, on a hot afternoon when the air was thick and still, Eleanor went into labor. Mrs. Chen sent one of the ranch hands racing to town for the doctor, but the baby had other ideas. Eleanor's labor progressed quickly, and by the time the doctor arrived, she was already pushing. Cole holding her hand and looking terrified and awed in equal measure. Their son was born just before sunset, coming into the world with a lusty cry that made everyone in the room laugh with relief. He was perfect, 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair and his father's brown eyes. Cole held him with shaking hands, tears streaming down his face, and Eleanor felt her heart expand in a way she hadn't known was possible. "What should we name him?" Cole asked, not taking his eyes off his son. Eleanor had been thinking about this for months. "James," she said. "James Henry Brennan, after both our fathers." "James Henry," Cole repeated, testing it out. "It's perfect, he's perfect, you're perfect." He leaned down to kiss her, careful not to jostle the baby. "Thank you. Thank you for him, for staying, for choosing me, for everything." The years that followed were full and rich, marked by hard work and deep satisfaction. James grew into a sturdy boy with his father's love of horses and his mother's quick mind. When he was 2, Eleanor gave birth to a daughter they named Catherine, after Eleanor's aunt. 2 years after that came another son, Robert, and finally, when Eleanor was 30, a last daughter named Grace. The ranch prospered under Cole and Eleanor's joint management. They expanded the cattle operation and built a reputation for breeding excellent horses. Eleanor's bookkeeping and strategic planning helped them weather the inevitable bad years, droughts, harsh winters, cattle diseases. They were never wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. Eleanor never forgot that moment when her wagon broke down a mile from Cole's ranch when he had ridden up and said fate had brought her to him. On their 10th wedding anniversary, as they sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard, she brought it up. "You remember what you said the day we met?" she asked. "I said a lot of things," Cole said, smiling. "Which particular thing are you thinking of?" "You said fate brought me to you, that it wasn't coincidence, it was providence." "I remember, and I was right, wasn't I?" Eleanor looked out at the ranch. The house they had expanded to accommodate their growing family, the barn that Cole had rebuilt after a fire, the corrals full of horses, the distant cattle dotting the prairie. She looked at their children, healthy and happy and loved. She looked at Cole, older now but still handsome, still the man who had offered to help a stranded woman without asking for anything in return. "You were absolutely right," she said. "Best broken axle I ever had." Cole laughed and pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "You know, sometimes I think about what would have happened if I had ridden in a different direction that day, if I had checked the north fence line instead of the west, if I had left an hour earlier or an hour later." "But you didn't," Eleanor said. "You rode exactly where you were supposed to ride, exactly when you were supposed to ride there. And my wagon broke exactly where it was supposed to break, and here we are." "Here we are," Cole agreed, "and I wouldn't change a single thing." As the years continued to pass, the Brennan Ranch became a fixture in the community. Cole and Eleanor were known for their fair dealing, their hard work, and their hospitality. Their children grew up learning the value of both, James eventually taking over more of the day-to-day ranch operations, Catherine showing a gift for healing that led her to study medicine in Denver, Robert developing his father's way with horses, and Grace inheriting her mother's head for numbers and planning. Mrs. Chen remained with them until she passed peacefully in her sleep at the age of 75, having become as much a part of the family as any blood relation. Her room stayed empty for months because none of them could bear to disturb it, but eventually, Eleanor turned it into a sewing room, filling it with light and purpose in a way she thought Mrs. Chen would have approved of. Eleanor's Aunt Catherine did eventually come to visit, making the journey from Silver Creek when James was 5. She stayed for 2 weeks and left declaring that Eleanor had made the right choice, that love like what she had with Cole was rare and precious and worth more than any business arrangement. She visited several more times over the years, and Eleanor made the journey to Silver Creek as well, maintaining the family connection even across the distance. As Cole and Eleanor grew older, they settled into a comfortable rhythm of life. They still did the morning chores together when their bodies allowed it, still sat on the porch every evening watching the sunset, still reached for each other in the night. Their love deepened and mellowed, less passionate perhaps than in those early days, but richer, more complex, built on decades of shared experiences and mutual respect. When Cole was 55, he was thrown from a horse during a particularly bad storm. The fall broke his leg badly, and though it healed, he was left with a limp and chronic pain that limited how much physical work he could do. He struggled with it at first, frustrated by the limitations of his aging body. But Eleanor was there, as she had always been, helping him adjust and find new ways to contribute to the ranch he loved. "You know," she told him one night as she rubbed liniment into his aching leg, "you've spent 30 years building this place up. Maybe it's time to let the next generation take the lead while you provide the wisdom." "You saying I'm old?" Cole asked, but he was smiling. "I'm saying we're both old," Eleanor said, "and we've earned the right to slow down a little, to enjoy what we've built." And they did slow down, gradually transitioning more responsibility to James while still remaining involved in the major decisions. They spent more time with their grandchildren. James and his wife had 3 children, and Robert had recently married a girl from town. They took trips to Denver to visit Catherine, marveling at how different city life was from ranch life. They spent long evenings in their favorite chairs by the fire, reading or talking or simply sitting in comfortable silence. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the family threw them a big celebration. Children and grandchildren came from all over, along with friends from town and neighboring ranches. There was food and music and dancing, and Cole managed to waltz Eleanor around the porch one more time despite his bad leg, both of them laughing like they had on their wedding night. As the sun set and the party wound down, their children gave them a gift, a new sign for the ranch entrance. Where the old sign had simply said Brennan Ranch, the new one read Brennan Ranch ESD, 1878, built on faith and fate. Eleanor cried when she saw it, and Cole held her while their family looked on with love and pride. "That's perfect," Cole said. "That's exactly what this place is." They lived to see the turn of the century, an achievement that felt monumental given the hard life of ranching. They sat together on the porch on January 1, 1900, wrapped in blankets against the cold, and marveled at all they had witnessed and experienced. The West was changing. The wild frontier was becoming settled, towns were growing into cities, and the railroad had made the world feel smaller. But here on the ranch, some things remained constant. The grass still grew, the cattle still grazed, the stars still filled the sky every night. Cole passed first on a quiet spring morning when he was 73. He simply didn't wake up, slipping away peacefully in his sleep with Eleanor beside him. She grieved deeply, but without regret. They had been given 45 years together, which was more than many people got. She had loved him fully and been loved fully in return. She had no room for regret, only gratitude. Eleanor lived another 5 years, remaining sharp and engaged despite her advancing age. She spent those years surrounded by family, watching her grandchildren grow and even meeting a few great-grandchildren. She continued to keep the ranch books, her handwriting growing shakier but her mind still clear. She told stories about the old days, about the Wild West as it had really been, hard and dangerous but also beautiful and full of possibility. She passed on a summer evening, sitting in her favorite chair on the porch with the sunset painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. James found her there, a peaceful smile on her face, looking out at the land she had called home for almost 50 years. In her lap was the old leather journal where she had kept a record of her life, and the last entry written that very morning said simply, "Still the most beautiful place on earth, still home, still exactly where I was meant to be." They buried her next to Cole on a hill overlooking the ranch, where they could watch over the land and the family they had built together. The headstone was simple. Eleanor Hartley Brennan, 1855–1923, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, her wagon broke down, and she found home below that, on Cole's side. Cole Brennan, 1850–1918, beloved husband, father, grandfather, he believed in fate. And fate proved him right. The Brennan ranch continued on, passed down through the generations, each one adding their own mark while honoring the foundation that Cole and Eleanor had built. The story of how it all started, with a broken wagon and a cowboy who believed in fate, became family legend, told and retold to each new generation as a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives are actually doorways to the best. And if you visit that ranch today, you can still see that sign at the entrance, built on faith and fate, because some stories are too good, too true, too important to forget. Some love stories are meant to be remembered, to inspire, to remind us that when we're brave enough to trust in the unexpected, magic can happen. Eleanor and Cole's story was one of those stories. It started with a broken axle and a man who said fate had brought her to him. It continued with courage and hard work and love that deepened with every passing year. And it ended, as all the best stories do, with a legacy that outlasted them both, a family that thrived, a ranch that prospered, and a love that became the stuff of legend. They had been given 3 days to fall in love and 45 years to prove it. And in the end, that broken wagon a mile from his ranch had been the beginning of everything, every joy, every child, every sunset watched together, every quiet moment of connection. It had been the best kind of beginning, the kind that you never see coming, but that changes everything. Eleanor had been looking for a home and she had found it. Not in Silver Creek with her aunt, not in some distant dream, but right there on that Wyoming ranch with a cowboy who believed in fate. And every single day of their life together, through the joys and the sorrows, the triumphs and the struggles, had proven him right. Sometimes a broken wagon is just a broken wagon. But sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, it's the first step on a journey to exactly where you're meant to be. For Eleanor and Cole, it was both. A disaster that became a blessing, an ending that became a beginning, a moment of bad luck that transformed into a lifetime of love. And that, in the end, is what makes it a story worth telling.